You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the On Purpose Podcast, where it's our mission to be one of the most impactful podcasts in the world. That means putting smiles on people's faces, maybe brightening their days, reminding them of what's possible, encouraging them to take that leap to believe in themselves by sharing purposeful content and stories of people that are doing just that, man, living life with purpose. And this week, I'm excited to sit down with some recent friends Andrea and I made when we went to Baja, Mexico. We joined their caravan group, and they led the first 2 weeks down there, sharing with us all their experience and knowledge of traveling Baja, and I can't thank them enough for that. So this week, we're going to sit down with Alexis Nascimento, who, along with her family, Stephen, Levi, Harvey, and the late puppy Ruby, are full-time travelers. They live their lives by the Never Say Someday philosophy, which just happens to be where you can find their website and Instagram, where they share their experiences, advice on RV living, how to boondock, their expansive knowledge of RVing through Baja and the world. And they do it to empower people, to lift you up, to share the real stories behind some of the highlight reels. So I hope you enjoy this week's conversation as Alexis and I sit down and talk about their start in the lifestyle, raising kids on the road, dealing with the loss of your mom, staying authentic in social media space, and more. So enjoy this week's episode, everybody. Alexis, my friend, it's so nice to see you again. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I've been excited to get you guys on the show, and I understand Steven's still out there manual laboring away.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's in the background. He tried to crash, and I was like, "No, you need a shower and to get back out there and get to work."
Projects don't finish themselves.
They sure don't.
Awesome. Well, I want to I love starting off with the guests. And one, thank you for being here and allowing us to share your story with our community. But I also just want to thank you for being you guys. And what I mean by that is you're just you. And when we got to meet you in person, it was refreshing to see just the authenticity that you and Steven and your boys live your life with. And I want to commend you for that and say thank you for allowing us space in your world for those 2 weeks that we traveled, and then we kind of stalked you down further south for another couple weeks. But I really just wanted to thank you for being you and for what you're bringing to the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I think sometimes when you open yourself up and you are vulnerable and you share your lives on social media, it can be a double-edged sword. So hearing that positive feedback is means a lot to both Stephen and I and the kids too.
Yeah, it was, and we talked a little off air. We've met other people online, and then we meet them in person, and you're kind of like, that wasn't what we've watched before or what we thought.
Yeah.
And you guys were, I mean, I was just amazed. Like from the first night we met you guys, I was like, oh, these are totally our people. Because you kind of come into it, you're like, okay, we've met online. I don't know how this is going to go. But no, I just loved it. And the fact that you were dealing with other stuff beyond your business and the new strangers that you were trying to make into a team to lead into Mexico was just phenomenal, and how you handled that. And
Thank you.
so with the grace that you were living those days.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always it always is a little nerve-wracking to bring a group of strangers together, and then not only on top of that, like bring people together who've never met, but cross a border, international border. It's always sort of one of those, what are we doing moments? And this is our third year in a row, and what I have found is, like, what you put out into the universe, you get back. And so we've always had the best people, and I think that makes it so much easier to show up and bring the excitement. And I felt really comfortable, given my personal situation, just sharing openly with this caravan crew this time, sort of what I was struggling with. And I'm so blessed to have a husband like Steven who's willing to step up when I need to step out. And it made for a really memorable and fantastic trip.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you guys are quite the team. So you guys should be proud of everything you've created in your world and that you're sharing with others.
Thank you.
But before we get too far into this, Alexis, I got to warm you up. I know
Okay.
I love your content. I usually get a good morning, buenos dias. You're out walking, right? I even know your little tagline. So this is kind of like that morning walk. I got to get the mind ready.
All
Are you
right.
ready for this?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee, 100%. And not just any coffee. I need an oat milk latte. Like I have to have that in the morning. Usually iced, but because we're usually never in cold weather. But yeah, that's my go-to. That's my jam.
Iced oat milk latte.
Yep.
All right. Favorite combination meal, brunch or dinner?
Ooh, that is a great question because I love food. Like I will tell people like especially at work, if I'm on a work trip, I'm like, where are we eating for lunch? Like one thing you will learn about me is like I'm always thinking about like what are we gonna eat next? Um I would have to say dinner. I feel like a cheese and charcuterie board, it's just like a little bit of vino to get get things going, followed by a nice dinner is probably my go-to. But I do love a brunch. Like I can't discriminate against a good mimosa
No.
and some eggs Benny.
Have you heard of dinner before?
I have,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, because the last guest I recorded with had never heard of it, so I was like, wow, maybe I should trademark dinner. Maybe that's my new thing in life. But apparently it's out there. All right, sunrises or sunsets?
This is a great question because I would normally default and say sunsets for two reasons. I'm up during a sunset and I'm not typically an early riser. But we are sort of stationed here in Baja for a few months, and the sunrises here are unreal. I mean, they are really, really good. So I've been finding myself setting my alarm for earlier, trying to wake up and catch those because you just don't want to miss them. And that's what was happening down here. I was seeing a lot of our friends that live down here on social media waking up early and posting these sunrises, and they are just as epic as the sunsets here. And so I'm like, I've got to catch both now. So sunsets by default, but sunrises when I can get my booty out of bed.
There you go. All right, reading a book physically or listening to audiobooks?
Oh, I'm a physical book reader by far, although I do read mostly on my Kindle. I love a good physical book. Obviously, we are living in an Airstream, as you can see behind me, and physical books take up a lot of space. And so I'm on the constant trade out, searching for little libraries. But yeah, I love a physical book. And funny enough, Steven is an audiobook guy. So he listens to a lot of books that way. And we usually give recommendations back and forth to each other, but in our specific discipline, if you will. I take those in.
What's a book you're currently reading, or one that you recently read that left a mark for you?
Yeah, I am reading Signs. And I know the author's name starts with Laura. I can't remember the rest of her name, but I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about this. My mom passed in November of last year. It's still very fresh. And right after she passed, I was just seeing little nuances. And we had talked previously when she was sick about I would see 1111 and I would see 555. And I even had them tattooed on my body because it was like, it always reminded me of my mom. And she would get really excited when she would see these little signs. And we talked about it a lot in the last year of her life. And, throughout the grieving process, a lot of people came to me with really great recommendations. And this book, Signs, was one of them. And I've just started it. I'm not even a third of the way into the book, but it's one of those that I am reading slowly because I want
Mm.
to savor it. I know I'm not going to want this one to end, and it is really, really beautiful the way that it's written, the stories that are told. Um, and I feel like after my mom passed, I catch glimpses of her everywhere, and it's a really beautiful thing, and it really helps move me along in that grief process.
Yeah, for sure. One more warm up question.
Okay.
You got to get your mind right. You got something weighing on you. You go in silence, or are you gonna turn on music? And if so, what song are you
Ooh,
gonna go to?
that's a good one. I am a big music lover, but I have found so much benefit from solitude and quiet reflection, going for a hike or a morning walk, or um, just complete silence. Like it helps me process things
Mm.
a lot more. It is something that I did in the year prior to going full time as a travel family, with so many fears and so many questions. I found myself that I could work through those fears, those hesitations, on my own. And I also really think that part of this lifestyle has been so great because I do get to walk and hike alone. We are often in remote parts of North America, and I get a lot of time to just reflect in the quiet. But if I am in the truck, then the music's on full.
Come on now, that's just to keep the kids quiet in the back. You're drowning them out.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good. You feeling warmed up there, Alexis?
Yeah, yeah, we're good to go.
I love it. So if you don't mind, let's start with you guys and the Never Say Someday moniker.
Yeah,
What inspired you and your family? Because you've been doing this now since 2019.
yeah,
So pre-COVID, when a lot of people kind of made the jump.
yeah.
What inspired you guys to make that jump, and how has that changed your perspective on life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, in 2017 and 2018, our kids were really young, in that like sort of toddler, preschool age range. And, becoming a parent is the most beautiful gift you could receive, but it also is really difficult to navigate. And I think there's a lot of pressure that we in society puts
Mm.
on ourselves to do all the things. And, Stephen and I both worked full time, and we just found ourselves asking, what are we doing? What are we like really doing? We had this like beautiful home. It took all weekend, all of our time off to sort of like maintain it. And then when Monday rolled around, for the next 5 days, it was just go, 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 go. And our kids weren't even in sports or anything like that. We just found ourselves really sort of tapped out. And Stephen is a big camper. He loves backpacking and hiking. And I would laugh because I was like, I don't really have a thing. Like, like I like to read, but that doesn't feel like a thing. And he was like, we should go camping. And I'm like, my idea of camping is like a cabin in the woods. I did not grow up camping at all. And very quickly we became weekend warriors. And we're originally from Central California in the Valley, and have a lot of beautiful places within a 2-hour radius: Yosemite, the Eastern Sierras, Santa Cruz, San Francisco. So we would kind of pack up all our things and hit the road for the weekend. And when you've got little kids, you come back on Sunday, it's like,
Oh,
all right, we're starting it back up again. And I think, for me personally, I was in a work meeting once, and it was like a big brainstorm, and we were doing the icebreakers, and people were like, what's the boldest thing you've ever done in life?
mm.
And I had a big fat goose egg. I was like, I don't think I've done anything bold. Like
Yeah.
I checked all the boxes, right? Like I got good grades. I went to college. Like I worked my tail off to get a good job. We bought the home, got engaged, got married, all the things. Check, 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 check. And it planted a seed in me that I think never went away, because all of these people were talking about, oh, I moved across the country to New York to work at this advertising agency, or I backpacked Europe or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what to say. And fast forward a few years later, Stephen and I can remember it so vividly. We were in our backyard, and I was really struggling with like burnout and just like the rat race in
Mhm.
general, right? Like just the same thing on the loop. And he said, what if we just shake things up? Like verbatim, what if we just shake things up and do something differently? Like, who says we can't? Like, we're adults now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you know, and we kind of just threw everything at the wall. Like, what would we want to do? Do we want to like move to Lisbon in Portugal? Stephen has Portuguese roots. Do we want to move to a different city, like try a different state? And at the time, we had bought a Sprinter van that Stephen was using as his like preschool caravan for the kids. And he had built like a platform bed, and that's what we were using for our weekend camping trips. And we were like, what if we just convert the van and move into it and like take a year and just go
Mm.
see, our backyard around us? And we sat on it for a while. We had a pretty like intensive process of like really thinking through, like, can we do this? What does it require? What are we giving up? What are the trade-offs? What are people going to think? What is our family going to think? And I think when we really started to dive deeper, we just got so freaking excited. We were like, wait a minute, I think like we can really do this. Like, we've set ourselves up financially in a way that makes sense, and the kids are still young, and we want to like lean into that quality time together. And we set a date, and
Do you remember the date?
yeah, it was, I think, June
Okay.
8th or 9th,
Okay.
2019. We were like, we have 1 year to make this
Oh.
happen. 1 year. And we were like, we're going to convert this van even more so it's a livable space. We are going to sell all of our shit, including our house. We knew we didn't want to come back to the same house. We wanted a smaller footprint if we were ever to go back to that traditional lifestyle. And then we just had so much stuff that we were like, we're not doing a storage unit. We really felt like it was important for us to not be tethered
Yep,
um, to our previous lifestyle, because we didn't want an easy out to
for
say, this
sure.
is hard. We're going to quit right now
Yep.
after 1 month,
Yeah.
3 months, whatever. And so we kind of just went and
Love it.
swung the pendulum to the opposite direction, and said, like, let's get rid of it all. Let's hit the road and let's see what happens. And we did.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment in that first transition phase where you're like, thank God I can't easily go back, or I would have? Do you have a
I
specific
think
moment?
there wasn't a specific moment. I think what ended up happening is I quit my job. Stephen was still working for the first 6 months, and he was positioned on the central coast of California. And so we sort of eased our way in,
Mm.
knowing that our boys were 4 and 6, pretty young. This was a very big change for all of us. And so for the first 6 months, we rented Airbnbs for a month at a time all over the central coast, and sort of just wanted to ease our way into homeschooling. ease our way into being together 24
Yeah.
7, right? Figure out like, what do our days look like? And I think like in those first few months, the struggle was like, are we, are we capable enough to do this? Like,
Mm.
am I qualified to homeschool my
Yeah.
kids? And I also felt really bad because Stephen was still working a full-time job. And here I am like gallivanting and hiking around and living my best life and
Yeah.
coming back and, being like, what's for dinner? So, and I think too, in those early months, I felt like, are we gonna meet people? Are we gonna just be
Mm.
sort of stuck in this very isolated situation because we weren't.
Yeah.
And that was once we sort of got out of the Airbnb situation and moved into the van. Um, and our first sort of like real adventure in the van, living in it full time, was going to Baja
Yeah.
in January of 2020 of all time periods. And um, once we got into the van, it's like everything clicked
Mm.
for us. I think it was, there's not a lot of space. You can't fill it. You can't continue sort of those same habits and the same like purchase behaviors that
Yeah.
you accumulate over the years in a traditional home. And we also just really felt like, okay, we're like in our happy place. Like nature is what fuels us. And the intention of the van wasn't for it to be all things a home on wheels.
Right.
It was really just like a vessel to sleep
Hmm.
and to travel. And our intention was to be outside, 90% of the day with our kids, just exploring and soaking in the sunshine. And
Yeah.
so that was sort of a really interesting transition. I felt like I'm glad that we eased on into it, because I think if we would have just gone straight into the van, we probably would have been like, whoa,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Yeah. What do you think relationship wise? I know one of the things that Andrea and I found is that going, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, how can you be with somebody in such a small space so much? But what we've
Hmm.
found over our 3 years is that we're actually closer because there is no space to just ah, push an issue to a side and deal with it tomorrow. Like you're gonna deal with it or you're gonna feel it really quick. Like,
Yep.
have you found that to be similar for you and Steven?
I feel like that is 100% the truth for us. We lived in a 2-story, 4-bedroom house. And if one of us pissed the other person off, like it was very easy to just retreat to our corners and not talk about it. I think what we found very quickly on, in a van of 19 feet long, 80 something square feet, that if we had an issue, we really needed to confront it right away. Um, and I feel like it brought us a lot closer. I feel like our relationship has taken a 180 in the best possible way. Like we are very open with each other. We're very open with our kids. And I think Stephen had a really good perspective when we came into this. Like whatever problems or issues you're having in life, in your marriage, in general, like taking those from a traditional lifestyle and shoving that
Mm,
into a lifestyle on the road doesn't change anything.
yeah.
Those problems will still be there. It's how you choose to address them. And so I feel like for us, like our communication has gotten better. I think too, it's like what I love about our relationship is that we are able to demonstrate that up close and personal with our kids. And so if they see us struggling, we talk about it openly and we prioritize fixing it.
Yeah.
And that has been absolutely just incredible for not only Stephen and I's marriage, but our family dynamics too.
No. Yeah, that's so good. And that's so truthful, right? Like I think that's one of the misgivings sometimes people get of RV life or just selling everything and going to travel is that the problems don't come with you. And you're absolutely right. They do. If you haven't dealt with them, you're just trading problems for problems.
Yeah. And oftentimes you're putting them into a pressure cooker,
Yes.
right? Because you've now, where am I going to sleep at
Yeah.
night? When's the next gas station?
Right.
How are we navigating where we want to go or what we want to do, or the priorities of the kids and what they need. So I think oftentimes if you can kind of come into this lifestyle with an open mind and an open heart, you will succeed.
Yeah.
But you've got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Was there a moment in that first year or two where you just sat back for a second and you were like, holy shit, this is actually our life?
Yeah, like every day. Every day. I think, what was really interesting for us is that we started in June of 2019. We were in Mexico when COVID broke out, and we found ourselves like second guessing, like, what do we do? We're in a van, we've sold our home, like this is insane, right? Like we have
Mm,
no real place to go, although we knew that we could come back and be with family. There was just so many unknowns at that time. And we ended up coming back to California and staying with family for about 6 weeks. And we quickly realized we need to get out of here. We need to get back in the van, back in isolation, back in like remote areas, back out in nature. And it kind of made us chuckle because it was like, here we are, like these experts on how to homeschool your kids, how to be with your spouse and your family 24 hours without wanting to kill each other. There's all of these things that like prepped us in that first year of travel that made it so much easier to navigate a pandemic. And I think, I hesitate to share this, and I don't tell a lot of people. But 2020 was our best year. It was the best year of my life,
yep.
aside from like marrying my husband and having my kids. It was just one of those that we felt like if we can come out of this, like we can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think, yeah, I commend you for saying that. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think it was a time for many, I'll tell you for our family, that we really questioned, okay, wait a second, if this can happen, what should I really be spending my time and energy on? Who should I be around? Where should I
Yeah.
be? And yeah, it is a very positive thing if you take it and you learn some lessons from it for sure. What would you say is been the biggest challenge for you? Because you're something different between us is my kids are old enough and they're actually doing this life
Mhm.
on their own, where you're still raising the kids. What's been the biggest challenge for you and making sure that you're giving the boys what they need?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge in the beginning was this sort of imposter syndrome of like,
Mm,
what makes me qualified? I do digital marketing. Like,
right.
what makes me qualified to homeschool our boys? And how how much time we should be focused on that versus exploring and playing. And I think very early on we discovered that like kids will learn from any environment, and they like to learn hands on. And so it's okay if we're not spending all of our time doing math worksheets and flashcards and spelling quizzes and all of the things that I think you overcompensate with when you become a homeschool parent. They have learned so much on the road. They can tell you basically every animal species we've ever encountered. They've seen volcanoes and glaciers and um, I mean, just you name it, they've experienced it. They've swam with whale sharks and have touched a gray whale, and they've had this really great life. And I think when we let go of those expectations, I talk a lot on our social media about like societal expectations and like being okay with just letting that
hmm
go, right? And like it's not for everyone, and that's not to say that a traditional lifestyle isn't a fantastic way to live. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not for everybody. So I would say like homeschooling has been the biggest challenge. I think, as the kids, we learned how fast kids grow
Yeah.
in a year. So, after a year in the van, we quickly realized this is not going to last much longer. And we realized this is the way for our family to
Mm,
thrive. We've just found so much joy in being on the road and finding new places and meeting new people, new cultures, that we eventually transitioned into the Airstream. And even now, I like to say that Levi, he'll be 12 at the end of this year, and he's my man child.
yeah.
He's the same size as me. And, we're trying to figure out like, what does that look like, for the next phase of our lives. But I do think our kids are very social creatures. They're just like mom and dad. And I think that like they have adapted so well to this lifestyle. And we really make sure the biggest consideration for them is they miss their grandparents, they miss their cousins, their family. And so we never stray too far from California. And we're probably in our hometown, same with family, 4 times a year,
Right.
sometimes more, because that's a really important foundational component to who they are and to who, we are now,
Yeah.
thanks to our parents. And so I think that's what sometimes can be the most challenging. But I think like that little, voice in the back of your head saying like, society is telling you that this isn't the right way to do things. Like your kids need to play sports, or they need to, they need to be in school, or homeschool isn't quote unquote real school. I think silencing that voice is really imperative
Mm.
to, being successful as a family on the road.
So how did you do that? How did you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I can do this.
I I read some really great books. One that is fantastic for any parent, really. It's The Call of the Wild and Free. I believe
Oh
that's what it's
yeah.
called. And it's just an amazing, beautiful book. One that I will recommend, but I will never give away my copy. Like I keep it with me,
Yep.
because it gave me so much reassurance that like I can do this. It's okay. It doesn't look the same for everyone.
Mm.
Um, and even as we meet families on the road, what homeschooling is for one is not the same for the other. And I think too, I have a really great partner in Steven, and we talk a lot about our goals and our dreams and our struggles. And he's always been a key proponent of like, just look at the kids, like they're fine, like they are doing
Yeah.
good. We are doing good. Um, let's lean into that
Mm.
and, you know, uh, remember, right? Like, remember what we were doing. We hope one day that our kids are going to look back and they're going to be like, I had the most epic childhood, and let me tell you some stories.
Yeah.
And that they carry that sort of sense of adventure with them as they continue to grow up and become their own adults and raise their own families, however that looks like
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think you hit on something there that I think is really important for people to realize is we're in a society right now where you're either pro or against. You're either for or anti.
Yes.
Like you can't ever be in the middle. And like just because you go for RV life or full time travel doesn't mean you're
Hmm.
not going to see family. Like you can literally, that's the freedom, right?
Yeah.
Is you could probably see them more often because you come back 4 times a year. But when you come
Hmm.
back, you have new experiences to share, right?
Yeah.
It's not the
And
same. What have you been up to? Oh, the same old, right? Like, and I think people don't understand that.
yeah, for sure. And I think too, we lean into quality time
Yeah.
versus quantity. We have the best families, and prior to going full time, we would do weekly dinners with our respective families, and we loved that. But what we found is like coming home for anywhere from 2 to sometimes 6 weeks at a time and like moving back in with the folks. Our kids get that quality one-on-one time with their grandparents. We get that quality one-on-one time with our own parents. And that has been such a blessing because I think sometimes when you're in that, just like, I'm just trying to get things done, I'm just trying to get to the next thing to check off the list, that you're not truly fully present. And this taking this route and this lifestyle has really sort of changed and shifted our perspectives on,
Yes.
you got to live in the moment. Like,
Yep.
you only get one life, and we are never going to say someday, and we're going to live for today. And it doesn't always have to be this like epic sense of adventure. Like, we're not cliff jumping or, you know,
no, you're right. It's the moment,
doing these
right? Like this
crazy things.
this walk that you and your son share for breakfast. That's a moment.
Yes.
And it's the most magnificent moment right then, because it's the only moment if you're present. But if you're walking with your mom to go have breakfast and you're on YouTube or you know what I mean, you're not there. And it's funny you say that, because Trey, our son, and I went on a long walk the other day, and you know, he's 23, so he's going through some of those societal norms and pressure because he's out here living in a bus and his friends are getting ready to graduate college, and should he have done this? And that was one of the things I talked about, is this lifestyle is great for keeping you present.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't need to go in the past, because if you're in the past, usually you have regrets, right? You're like, oh, why did I do that? If you're thinking too much in the future, you're anxious, you're nervous. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And most of that stuff never even happens anyhow, and you spend all this time worrying about it. And the stuff in the past you can't change because it's already done.
Yeah.
But what you have right now is this conversation. But if I'm talking to you and my mind's on what I'm going to do next or what I got to do at 5 o'clock, well, then I don't give you my best me. And then at the end, I don't remember this moment. And that's what I think is the beauty of this lifestyle, is the pace is slow enough that you can really be present.
Absolutely. I think it doesn't hurt that when you are traveling on the road in an RV or van or whatever it may be, like, your life is simplified so much that you're back to basics. Do we have enough water for the rest of the day? Do we have enough power? Or is our solar working, right? Like, they're really fundamental things. Like, do we need to dump the black tanks? Like, all of those, like, I mean, there's nothing sexy about it, but it really does. Like, where are we going to camp tonight? Right? Like, that was when we were in the van, like, we hit it hard, and we were very picky. And oftentimes we would be like scouting the 8th place and then be like, okay, 10 o'clock at night, we've just got to make a decision. But I think, like, it really sort of, it simplifies everything that you're trying to do and accomplish. And it takes you straight to the basics. And sometimes that's what people need to understand how to live in the moment.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, take away a lot of the distractions. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Alexis, can you share with me, how did Baja, because a big part of your business is the Baja caravans and you sharing just the beauty that is Baja. How did that get so woven into your life?
Yeah. So when we lived in a van, you have to chase the sunshine. You have to chase good weather, because there is nothing worse than being in the Pacific Northwest during a rainstorm, confined to 80 square feet.
Right.
And so we knew that we wanted to do something different. We were trying to be scrappy and on a budget. And Stephen had said, there's this place called Baja. Like, it just looks so cool. Like, people RV there. And I'm like, Mexico? Like, that sounds crazy. And, but the more we started looking into it, the more we were like, wait a minute, like, this looks actually really epic. And, you know, it's funny because we had found several other van lifers, as they call them, who were coming down to Baja at the same time. Some of our best friends on the road, we met that first year. And so when we had told our families, because I think that was like probably the biggest, like, we are going to cross an international border and we're going to go stay there for a couple of
Yeah.
months. We're like, we're doing this like caravan and it's going to be great. And there's a lot of people and like, we're all, hyper connected and yada, yada. And that was like far from the case. Like we crossed by ourselves. It was, it was an oh shit moment. Like just that, like, oh my gosh, we're like in another country and like we're driving and like, there's just so many what ifs and question marks in your mind. And when we got to our first campsite, I remember thinking like, you can't camp like this in the States.
Mm.
Like you can't, I mean, it's just like not allowed. And it's also really inexpensive. And then like you start unlocking like, okay, let's go to this taco stand because Anthony Bourdain went there in Ensenada. And it's like, and it's just like fish tacos and
Yeah.
shrimp tacos. Like it's nothing fancy whatsoever. And what we quickly realized was that Baja is magical.
Mm.
It slows you down. It chooses you, and then it purposely slows you down and says, whatever your plans are, kick them out the window because you're going to stay here for another week, or you're going to, you're just going to go explore more. Like every time I talk to somebody who wants to come down to Baja, I'm like, how long are you going to come down for? I'm like 2 weeks. I'm like, give yourself 6, like just as a just in case, because that will happen.
Yeah.
But what we found was as we drove along the peninsula, the first and foremost, the people are incredible. Mm-hmm. The culture is so rich here. You can learn a lot about the Mexican culture, about slowing down, prioritizing family. I think my favorite little nuance here is like, if you have a tienda, if they're running a tienda and they make their sales for the day, they have no hesitation to shut it down and go hang out and go be with family or friends or to the beach or whatever. It's a different pace of life. And then when you layer in all of the beautiful places you get to go, the food, the camaraderie of meeting people on the road, Baja is like a through hike. If you've ever done a backpacking trip, there's only like two main highways, and your likelihood of seeing the same people along that route is very high. Yeah. So even if you didn't say hi at the first or second stop, by the third stop, you're like, you were in San Felipe, right? Okay, cool. Like, and you meet so many amazing people, and the weather's perfect.
Yeah.
So for our first trip, we literally looked at each other after like week 2 and we were like, we are never going anywhere else in the winter. Like this is our spot.
Oh, wow.
And here we are, in our 5th season in Baja and still finding new gems, still meeting new people, and having these new and like really formative experiences for us has been amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, you guys have done a great job sharing it with people, and we thoroughly enjoyed our time down there. I think we were the same. We came down with you guys for 2 weeks, and I think we ended up spending 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So
it happens.
Which was great. That's why we kept that back end open, because we're like, if we like it, we're going to stay. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I want to transition a little bit, Alexis. Social media is a big part of your guys' business, the Never Say Someday brand, and on Instagram, you do a great job there. What advice would you give or share about being able to keep your authenticity in the online space?
I think it's always a work in progress. I can remember very early on, like I'm a talker. You can tell. I don't shut up. But it as I was going on my morning walks and thinking about what I was doing and what kind of crazy thing we were going to set out for this adventure, I found myself putting my video camera in front of me and just talking from the heart. And I really had no intention of sharing that. And I remember the first time I did, I was like, this is really scary. Like, I don't know what people are going to think, but it's so cathartic for me to share my authentic self. Even just saying things out loud
Yeah.
is helpful for me. And I think I just sort of got accustomed to doing that. And I wanted to keep it really real. I wanted people to understand the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I do think, I think it's better now, but I think in particular, like 5, 6 years ago, you were only really seeing the highlight
Yeah.
reels of people. And it just didn't seem likely that
Yeah.
that was real life. And so showing up in that way, I think helps people understand like everything's a choice, everything is a risk. It's how you work through it and process it that is going to propel you to the
Mm.
next level, the next phase of your life. And so sharing on social media for me was my primary goal was twofold. I wanted my parents and Steven's parents to just be like, they're crazy, but like they're safe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like this is wild, but it's epic.
Yeah.
And so there was there was a little bit of like I wanted to prove that one, we could do this, but also just like share like, look, the kids are fine, I'm fine, like look at our backyard, this is
Yeah.
amazing. And then the second goal was really sort of this like travel diary in a sense for our kids to look back on, because they were so young when we started, that I wanted them to be able to have all of those memories in one place, and to be able to say like, oh my gosh, like I forgot that we went there, but like now that I see it, I
Mm.
remember that particular trip or that particular place. And I still don't consider myself like, I'm not an influencer. I don't, I'm not sure I influence
Yeah.
anybody, but I think I can show up authentically because I'm not making money off of
Yeah.
this. I work a full-time job, and I've done freelance in the past. I really wanted it to be a space where I could just share what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
also like look back at some point when things are hard, look back and go, wow, like we really did that. Like
Hmm.
we really figured this out, and you know, we were thriving, we are thriving, and like we can always get back to that. Um, and so that's sort of how the social media aspect really came to be. I did dabble in like paid partnerships and stuff, and I feel like that's a whole other can of worms,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
for
for
another day.
sure.
But it makes it easy to be your true self and to just like share when you want to share. And when I go dark, it's for a good reason. And I usually come back and explain what
Yeah.
has happened. But I also feel like I don't owe this community that has come to us every explanation for every little thing. I
Yeah.
just want to, when it's hard, I'm going to tell you it's hard. And when it's good, I'm going to tell you it's really good.
No, that's amazing. And that was one of the things I noticed in our time together is you had just recently lost your mom and you were very open about the grieving process and you shared it. And I admired it. Thankfully, neither Andrea and I have lost our moms yet, but I'm listening to you and being around you, I was like, man, how would I be handling this? And you did it with such grace and a manner that would definitely honor your mom. That she'd
Thank
look at
you.
you and be like, that's my baby girl for sure. Um, what was that like deciding to go, you know what, I'm going to share this piece of me too? How did that come about?
Yeah. So when my mom got sick, she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia uh, in November of 2022. And it was a big sort of shock to the system. Um, and for being a person who shares a lot of aspects of my life, it felt like something that it wasn't my story to tell.
Hmm.
And it was very personal to my mom, and she kept a lot of things very close to the vest. Um, and I commend her for that, because I think we are, I would have a very different experience and a very different journey had I gone through something like that. But eventually she started like, is it okay if I tell people? Because I'm really struggling. Like there's a whole process that happens when somebody
Yeah.
is diagnosed with cancer, that, as a child you go through. We always remained optimistic. And so when she did pass, it it came as a shock
Yeah.
to us. I think my entire family thought she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
She's going to make it. And when she didn't, the foundation of everything I knew to be true was rocked. And I was amazed at the outpouring, just from our community, like prior to even sharing it, but just like through our hometown and family and friends, like how amazing and how loved I felt in those first few weeks, that I thought, I I process things through words. Like I process through conversations, and I come from a family of, we don't like really talk about our feelings.
Sure.
And so sometimes it is easier for me to show up for strangers
Mm.
and share my journey, and receive what I get in return, um, without the pressure, right, of having the dialogue. And what I found was that as I continued to sort of share what I was going through, so many people had amazing, incredible, beautiful words for me. It felt good to know that I was being held in prayer by other people and
Yeah.
my family, my dad. And I think the one thing that I took away from it is that, um, sharing makes grief a less lonely part of the journey, because it is very, very lonely.
For sure.
It is very hard to talk about, but it is also like the thing that you don't want to be. I don't want to be the girl that was like killing the mood because I'm having a moment and I
Yeah.
just need to get it off my chest. I'm very conscious about how my family is grieving, and when I'm having hard days, not burdening them with what I'm feeling if they're having a good day. And I don't know if that's
Yeah.
right or wrong. I'm
Yeah.
still so early in the journey that we are figuring it out. But um, the way people will show up for you from all across the internet, people you've never met, is a really, really special thing. And it says a lot about humanity in
Yeah.
a time where I feel like we aren't always seeing that.
Yeah, I think it's a great reminder of the good in the world. And I think that is also one of the great things about this lifestyle is you realize most people you meet are genuinely good people, no
100%.
matter where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I commend you on sharing that. And it's always been something that I watch from afar, but before we were near each other. And I just admire you for it. And anything you need, we're always here for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciated you guys. I think, having my mom pass and then less than 4 weeks later, seeing a caravan of RVs across the border, was a really tough thing for me to do, because I wanted to like bring the fun and like make sure that
Yeah.
experience was, for some people, it is a once in a lifetime thing. And what I found was that when I opened up at the individual level to people like you and Andrea and others on the caravan, that you guys held space for me and you understood, and it alleviated a lot of that pressure that I was feeling to just always be on.
Yeah.
And so it was, that in turn was really beautiful too, because it teaches you a lot about that it's okay to be vulnerable, right? It's easier for
Yeah.
me to do it on a video and post it to the internet, but like the one-on-one, the face-to-face, is a lot harder for me. And I felt like I had a safe space during those few weeks, and it really helped me work through all of that grief, you know, and identify like when I know it's coming and when and
Yeah.
how to deal with it and how to just say like I can't be at the campfire tonight and know that like that's cool with
Yeah.
everybody, you know?
It's interesting to me. It's also a reminder of, to me, how lives cross for a reason,
Hmm.
right? Like, I always go to, you guys are in constant motion moving. We're in constant motion moving. Everybody else in that crew is in constant motion moving through life. And the
Hmm.
fact we all met at one place with a common goal, like, that's what it's for, right? It's to make space
Hmm.
for each other and to learn from each other, and I think that's a lesson I would love to share for people, just in whatever lifestyle they are. Is when people cross your path, be curious as to why is this person in my path.
Right. Yeah. And I'm finding that, you know, as I mentioned that book Signs, I'm finding that so much more frequently. Like when you look
Yeah,
for it and you acknowledge it, it's an incredible gift that, you know, you just have to be open to and fully present for.
yeah, exactly. I love it. Alexis, I want to wrap up with kind of what is the future plans for the Never Say Someday brand that you guys have built, and um, what's that next thing look like for you?
Yeah. So I think for us right now, we are in a constant flow of work. You know, we're coming up on 5 years of being a full-time travel family, and it's an incredible feeling. It kind of just feels like it was yesterday. Um, but we're sort of like reinventing what the future looks like for us. I think part of that is we recognize just how beautiful it is to bring people together and cross the border and share our favorite place with them, in our Baja caravans. And so we'll continue to do that and, you know, potentially expand upon that. You know, I'm really proud to say that like we have found a place that is an amazing place to like plug in and have community, and that's in Playa Los Oritos, which is about an hour from Cabo. And we bought land here last spring. And in true form of Never Say Someday, we are carving out a communal space for people to come camp. Very small campground, very intentional, but you know, sort of gleaming all of the aspects that we loved from other campgrounds and hip camps that we've experienced over those past 5 years, and really just trying to build something special here that for people that do make their way all the way down to the tip of the southern peninsula of Baja, um, can come and experience and enjoy, and settle in, you know, short term or for the long haul, should
Sure.
they choose.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, that'll probably fit in well with the boys' growth too, right?
Yeah,
The age they're at where they have a little more of a home base down there as well.
totally. And we've met some incredible families down here over the years. I mean, this is our 5th year, and they've got lifelong friends that every winter and spring they know they're gonna catch up with. And what's really incredible is that there are other families who are, you know, choosing to sort of settle here, either part-time or full-time, and so they're making a lot of new friends. They have like their first neighbor kid that they run back. It's like a 10-minute walk. And so like we make them get their PE by going and visiting their buddy. But it's
Uh,
been really cool because I feel like they have a good sense of home. You know, they appreciate it. And then also they like get to see their mom and their dad like plan.
yeah,
Like 5 years ago, they were too little to really understand what we were trying to do, or how we were doing it. And now they're getting like a first hand look at like drawing out plans and, you know, meeting with different people. And, you know, their dad is working 6 days a week. He only takes Sundays off because that's sort of the work culture here.
Yeah.
And he wants to be there, every step of the way with our crew on site. And so it's been really cool for our kids to kind of witness something being built from the ground up. And I hope that it's something that they'll take with them, for their lives.
I love it. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been a true honor to share your story with our community. Where can they follow along and be part of the Never Say Someday community?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You can follow along on Instagram or Facebook at Never Say Someday. And we do have a blog and a website, neversaysomedayfamily.com. We talk a lot about our adventures there and have itineraries, especially for young families, including where to camp, where to explore, eat, and make your way through Baja.
And all the best taco stands.
And all the best taco stands. Yeah, I pride myself. That is one bit of research I do not mind doing,
Thank you so much, Alexis.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.